They had her name carved in stone and dirt across the 7 kingdoms. Wanted, Sansa Stark, for high treason, conspiracy, murder, and the fall of King's Landing. Her red hair, once a symbol of grace and nobility, was now the color of rebellion. In the markets of Dawn, in the gutters of Flea Bottom, even in the cold wind of the north, her face on the parchment was worth more than gold. But no one knew the whole story, not the truth. She never meant to become this. It began in the last peace Westeros ever knew. King Bran sat on the throne, quiet and distant. Arya had sailed into legend. Jon had vanished beyond the wall. Sansa ruled the north, but she was never satisfied. The crown of the north was heavy, yes, but it wasn't enough. For years, she played the loyal queen, building alliances, rebuilding Winterfell, swearing oaths to no one but her people. But deep down, the girl who had survived Joffrey, Ramsay, Littlefinger, she wanted more. She believed she deserved more. The first spark came quietly. Tyrion Lannister went missing. It was said he left for Pentos under Bran's blessing, but those who'd served close to the throne whispered otherwise. He was last seen speaking to Sansa privately in Winterfell. No one ever saw him again. The raven Bran sent south afterward was never answered. One day Tyrion Lannister was Hand of the King. The next, he was a ghost. Rumors thickened like fog that Tyrion discovered a plot, that he'd tried to blackmail Sansa. Some said she killed him. Some said he helped her vanish into the shadows. The only thing that mattered, he was gone, and power abhors a vacuum. The council fell apart weeks later. Bran, ever still, did not intervene when Sansa began sending envoys to the Riverlands, not to discuss trade, but protection. Lord Edmure Tully, spineless and soft, bent his knee to her quietly. He had no real choice. With his loyalty came a key route between north and south. By the time anyone in King's Landing realized what was happening, half the lords who swore to the Iron Throne had already begun reconsidering their loyalties. They said Sansa promised justice, she promised stability. But what she delivered was chaos. It wasn't war at first. She was smarter than that. It began with a death in Old Town, the Archmaester of Whispers, throat cut in his study, no signs of forced entry. Then came the fire in Lannisport that killed 3 of Cersei's surviving loyalists. The wildfire stash underneath Blackwater Bay, stolen. Then came the letter, a parchment, sealed in stark white wax, sent directly to Bran by Raven. It contained only 6 words. You left me no other choice. He never spoke a word about it, but he ordered her capture that same day. The North did not take kindly to that. Suddenly, every raven sent north went unanswered. Every rider disappeared in the snow. Sansa had closed Winterfell to the realm and turned it into a fortress. Those who fled south brought wild stories of strange weapons, alliances with wildlings, and mercenaries, whispers of a new army forming, one without a flag, bound by a single vow, serve the Queen of the North, or fall beneath her shadow. King's Landing declared her a traitor, but the words sounded hollow. Half the city barely remembered what peace looked like. The small folk were starving, the gold cloaks were bought and sold like cattle. Bran saw everything and still did nothing. Until it was too late. One night, without warning, the bells of King's Landing rang out in panic. Sansa Stark had arrived. She didn't bring dragons. She didn't bring fire. She brought silence. Her spies had already poisoned the wells. Her allies had already opened the gates. The Red Keep fell, not with a battle, but with a whisper. When dawn rose, Bran the Broken was gone. Some say he escaped, others say he never even existed. The throne was melted, twisted, or maybe taken. No one truly knows. What remained was blood, and a single message, scrawled in red across the broken wall of the throne room: the wolf no longer kneels. The hunt began that same day. The kingdoms cried out for her head. The small council declared her the most dangerous woman in Westeros, and Sansa Stark disappeared like snow in summer. But she wasn't hiding. She was building something worse. The fires in King's Landing smoldered for 3 days. Ash mixed with blood in the gutters, and no one came to clean it. The Red Keep, once the heart of Westeros, was nothing more than a scorched ruin. The few lords who remained alive gathered in whispers, refusing to look each other in the eye. No king, no council, no crown, and no trace of Sansa Stark. They thought she'd vanished into the shadows after the fall, but they were wrong. She wasn't running, she was ruling. From the shadows of the Eyrie came the first signs. Raventree Hall, a loyalist holdfast, burned to the ground. Black banners, bearing the sigil of House Stark, embroidered with a blood-red X, were found flying over the rubble. It wasn't Northern Steel alone. There were wildlings among them, sellswords from Essos, and even whispers of exiled Unsullied who had turned their back on peace. No survivors, no mercy, no message. Except one: bend the knee or bury your dead. At Harrenhal, Lord Grafton tried to mount resistance. He called on the Reach, on House Tyrell's lingering cousins, even on the Iron Bank for mercenaries. He had gold, men, and arrogance. He lasted 12 days. On the 13th, they found his head nailed to the gates of the Twins. His men flayed, left in the river. The words, "Traitors sleep in red," carved into their chests. Sansa was sending a message not just to the lords, but to the world. She was no longer a queen of words. She was a queen of consequence. Far in the north at Winterfell, there was no laughter in the halls anymore. The once proud castle had transformed into something colder than it had ever been. A council of shadows now sat beside her, faceless. Men, mute women, strange red priests whispering old tongues near the fire. No one knew their names. No one dared ask. Brienne of Tarth arrived at the gates once, months after King's Landing fell. She came with no sword, no banners, only sorrow. In her eyes, she begged for peace, said Sansa still had a heart once. They say Sansa welcomed her with wine and silence. The next day, Brienne's horse returned alone. There were rumors she was still alive, locked in the crypts, chained in the snow, or worse. No one knew for sure, but everyone knew one thing. Sansa had become a storm with no end. Meanwhile, the Riverlands collapsed. Edmure Tully had vanished again. His bannermen now served under a man known only as the Dire Knight, a cloaked rider who never removed his helmet, whose sword never left his side. Some said it was Jon Snow returned from the north, corrupted by dark magic. Others swore it was a son of Ned Stark no one ever knew existed. But the truth, it didn't matter. What mattered was that he killed without question, and he answered only to Sansa. The South, desperate for order, tried to raise another king. Gendry Baratheon was crowned in Storm's End with haste and false hope. He was noble, honest, brave, and stupid. Sansa's assassins found him within weeks. He died not in battle, but in bed, his throat slit with Valyrian steel, his blood soaked the Stormlands, and started a civil war that still hadn't ended. With each death, each ruined holdfast, each twisted betrayal, Sansa became more than just a fugitive. She became a myth, a monster, a curse whispered into campfires and mothers' lullabies, and still no one could find her. Even Arya, who had returned from the far seas when the Raven reached her, couldn't track her sister. She rode with steel and vengeance, hunting those responsible for Tyrion's death, the fall of Bran, the ruin of King's Landing. But every path ended in silence. Every lead turned cold. Arya once told a dying lord, "I don't believe she's a villain. I believe she's the last one who remembers how cruel this world is." The man laughed until Arya slit his throat, and far to the east across the narrow sea, ravens began to fly once more. But these weren't the ravens of Westeros. These came from strange towers, black ships, and cities where dragons once flew. They carried news of a woman with red hair and a voice that could bend men to their knees. A queen with no crown, a wolf in silk. She called herself Protector of the Realms, Avenger of the North, the fire in the snow. But to the rest of Westeros, she was something else entirely. The most wanted woman alive. And still, she was just getting started. The snow fell harder in the north that year, thicker than any storm in memory. Some called it a curse. Others believed it was a blessing, a sign that the old gods were stirring in their frozen trees. But for those who lived under Sansa Stark's rule, it was something else entirely. It was protection. No southern lord dared venture north of the Neck anymore. Scouts went missing. Armies disappeared in the snow. The lands surrounding Winterfell had become a death trap of ghost trails, ancient rituals, and eyes that watched. From the trees, the north had become hers, not just by blood, but by fear. And deep within Winterfell, Sansa stood alone before the ancient heart tree, the red leaves rustling like whispers behind her. Her face, once soft and warm, had hardened like the bark of the gods would. Every piece of her that once belonged to that bright-eyed girl in King's Landing was gone now, burned away in betrayal, war, and lies. But behind those cold eyes, there was still fire, purpose, a storm of thought that never stopped. She knew the realm called her a traitor. She knew the bounty on her head could feed 10,000 small folk. But what they didn't know was that this had all been set in motion long before Bran ever took the throne. This was not vengeance. This was justice. Because Sansa had seen what mercy brought. It brought mad queens with dragons. It brought Joffrey with his crown and crossbow. It brought betrayal from every man who ever smiled at her and promised her safety. So she no longer believed in mercy. She believed in order. And for that, the realm would hate her. Behind her, footsteps echoed softly against stone. The dire knight had arrived. His cloak was soaked in blood and frost. His sword still sheathed, though the scent of death clung to him like perfume. Sansa turned only slightly, her voice low. "Did he speak?" The dire knight nodded. "Before I slit his throat." "What did he say?" He paused, and when he finally spoke, his voice was low and quiet, gravel wrapped in velvet. "He said Arya's coming." Sansa's jaw tightened. She hadn't spoken her sister's name in over a year. It was too dangerous, too painful. She didn't know what Arya knew. She didn't know what Arya thought. All she knew was that her sister had always hunted monsters, and now she might see one in her. Still, Sansa didn't flinch. "Let her come." The dire knight tilted his head. "You're not afraid of her?" "I'm afraid of no one," Sansa whispered. "But I regret the day she sees what I've become." He lingered for a moment, then knelt. "The Riverlands are yours, my queen. The Blackfish's line is dead. The Tully name is no more." "Good," Sansa said. "We don't need old names anymore." She stared out into the snow, through a slit in the wall, watching as the flakes danced over the courtyard below. Her people moved like shadows, quiet, swift, armed. No more soft northern pride. They were wolves now, hungry and lean. But it wasn't enough. "My lady," the dire knight said, "there's something else." Sansa didn't turn, but her fingers curled. He continued, "The Maester intercepted a raven, not from Westeros, from Volantis." That got her attention. "Volantis?" "Yes. Someone's asking for you, not as a fugitive, as an ally." Her silence was long and sharp. "Who?" she asked. The knight hesitated. "They didn't sign a name, just a symbol." He pulled a crumpled parchment from his cloak and held it out. She took it slowly. Her eyes scanned the ink, narrowing. It was a circle of fire, with a red three-headed dragon in the center. She stared for a long time, then laughed once. Cold, bitter. "So the Targaryens want to rise again," she muttered. He didn't answer. "Let them," she said finally. "They'll come crawling across the sea, chasing old glory. I'll show them what happens when you play with fire." She crushed the parchment in her hand and let the flame from a nearby torch eat it alive. "Gather my council, no more hiding. If Arya's coming, let her come. If the Targaryens want to resurrect their dynasty, let them bleed for it. We strike first." "And where?" the knight asked. Sansa's eyes narrowed as the wind howled. "Through the keep. Dragonstone. We burn their nest before their wings even open." But deep beneath the castle, in the crypts where the bones of Starks whispered secrets to the dark, a secret chamber glowed with firelight, a place even Maester Vulcan was forbidden to enter. Inside, behind a wall of ice and stone, a prisoner stirred. Bound in chains, face pale and eyes sunken, a broken voice whispered weakly in the dark, "Sansa, what have you done?" The face barely looked human anymore, but it was once known across the realm. Tyrion Lannister, still alive, still watching. Part 4 is next. Tyrion's imprisonment, Arya's return, and a bloody rebellion brewing within Winterfell itself. The sound of dripping water echoed through the crypts, each drop landing like the tick of a dying clock. Tyrion Lannister sat slumped in chains, his wrists raw, his breath shallow. The air was thick with cold and rot, but worse than the cold was the silence. He hadn't heard a voice in weeks. No guard, no whispers, no footsteps. Only his thoughts, and they were cruel company. He had once ruled from the small council. He had once made kings bend with words, sharper than any blade. Now he was just a ghost under the snow, rotting in the belly of Winterfell. He didn't know how long it had been since Sansa brought him here. She hadn't visited since the first day. That day she'd walked in with eyes he didn't recognize. Eyes not of a queen or a survivor, but a strategist, a weapon. "You spoke too much," she'd said. Tyrion had laughed. "Is that not what saved us all once?" But her silence was colder than the chains she ordered fastened to him. And now here he was, forgotten by the world, remembered only in the worst ways. The last Lannister buried alive in the home of wolves. Until today, he heard it. Soft footsteps, not the slow, deliberate pace of her silent guards. These were light, familiar. He looked up. For a moment he thought it was a trick of the torchlight, but when the hood came down, his heart stumbled in his chest. Arya Stark. She looked thinner, sharper, her face hard as steel, but her eyes, those eyes still held fire. "Still alive?" she said flatly. "She always had a soft spot for you." Tyrion coughed a bitter laugh. "This is your rescue?" "I haven't decided yet." She stepped closer. Her hand hovered near her dagger. "You know what they say about you," Tyrion rasped. "That you're the only one she fears." Arya didn't answer. "I hope that's true," he said, voice dry, "because if someone doesn't stop her, she'll burn this realm from snow to sand." Arya knelt down, studying him closely. "What did you do to her?" "I tried to stop her," he said. "She was building alliances with people she swore to hate. She was planning the fall of King's Landing months before she even left the north." Arya's eyes narrowed. "So you betrayed her?" "I exposed her," he whispered, "and she made me vanish." Arya stood. "You made a mistake." "I've made many, but letting her become this, that's the worst." She stared at him for a long moment, then turned to go. "Wait," Tyrion gasped. "Arya, she's going after Dragonstone. There's a Targaryen alliance. I saw the raven before she burned it." Arya froze. "She wants to wipe them out before they even land. She's afraid of dragons, Arya, afraid of magic. She thinks she's the only answer." Arya turned her head slightly. "And what would you do?" Tyrion gave a broken smile. "I'd let the dragons burn her, but I think you want something cleaner. She disappeared into the shadows. Tyrion was alone again, but this time hope lingered in the air. Meanwhile, above in the great hall, Winterfell's walls were shaking from within. It started with whispers, strange rituals being performed in the godswood, red priests chanting in the kitchens, northern bannermen disappearing in the night. Then came the fires. 2 longhouses were burned to cinders, with their families locked inside. No one claimed responsibility, but the truth spread like rot. A rebellion had begun inside Winterfell. Not all Northerners believed in Sansa's new order. Some still held to old ways. Some saw the dire night as a monster, not a protector. And some feared that Arya's return meant blood would flow from within, not from without. Sansa knew. Of course she knew. In her war room she stood before a map, one hand on Dragonstone, the other on Winterfell. 2 fronts, she said quietly, both dangerous. The dire knight stepped forward. We root them out. The traitors inside, the dragons outside. No, she said, that's what Cersei would have done, what Daenerys did. She turned. We'll be smarter. How? He asked. Let the rebellion rise, she said. Let them think they can win. Then we bleed them dry, one by one. He nodded, but paused. And your sister? Sansa looked away. She's not part of this, she said. She doesn't understand what I'm doing. And if she tries to stop you, Sansa closed her eyes, then I'll bury her next to father. Outside Winterfell, just beyond the trees, Arya watched. She had seen enough. She didn't know what Sansa had become. A queen, a tyrant, a savior. But she knew one thing. She wasn't going to let her sister destroy what little was left of their world. The snow came down in thick, slow sheets, muffling the sound of steel beneath it. Arya moved through the shadows of Winterfell like a ghost, her breath barely visible, her steps soft as a whisper. The godswood was colder now, not from weather, but from something deeper. There were strange offerings at the foot of the heart tree. Charred bones, twisted roots wrapped in cloth, symbols from the Red Temple. Someone, or something, had been performing rituals in the old god's home. Sansa had brought in more than foreign soldiers. She'd brought in foreign faith. Arya crouched behind the roots, hand resting on the hilt of needle. She watched as 2 silent figures in black robes knelt before the tree, whispering in tongues no Stark ever spoke. The firelight from their candles danced across the red bark, and for a moment Arya thought the face in the tree was weeping. She moved before they could finish their prayer. One died quickly, a clean cut through the spine. The second turned to run, but never made it past the tree. Arya buried her blade in his throat, his blood mixing with the snow like ink in milk. When she left the godswood, she left no prints behind. She was done watching. Across the sea, the fires of Dragonstone burned brighter than ever. The old Targaryen fortress, long silent, was alive again. Sails from Essos dotted the shore, men with strange armor and strange names, walking the halls with purpose. At the center of it all stood Daemira Velaryon, daughter of a forgotten prince, raised in exile, baptized in fire. She was Targaryen in blood, Velaryon in name, and vengeance was her birthright. Before her knelt emissaries from the free cities, men who feared what Sansa had become. One spoke of Sansa's alliance with Shadowbinders from Ashai. Another told of the death of Gendry, of the rumors surrounding Tyrion, of the fear spreading across the narrow sea. She means to rule all, one whispered. Even the East fears her reach. Daemira said nothing at first, then turned to the brazier and dropped a scroll inside. It was a copy of Sansa's last raven, the one that read, "There is no throne to claim, only ash to inherit." "I am fire made flesh," Daemira said. "Let the wolf taste flame." She turned to her general. "Ready the black sails. We sail on the next full moon." A single dragon's cry echoed in the distance. Back in Winterfell, Sansa stood in the crypts once more. This time, she was not alone. Tyrion sat upright, barely able to breathe, but alive. Sansa watched him like a scholar watches a failed experiment. "You're thinner," she said. "I've lost my appetite for chains." "I didn't kill you," she reminded him. "No, you locked me beneath the bones of your ancestors. A lovely mercy." Sansa stepped closer. "You wanted to betray me to the council, to Bran." "I wanted to save you," Tyrion spat, coughing violently. "You were better than this once." "No," she said quietly, "I was weaker than this. And you, Tyrion, are the last man alive who should preach about morality." He laughed bitterly. "I used to drink away my shame. What do you use now?" She didn't answer, but before she could turn to leave, he asked something that made her stop cold. "Does Arya know what's down here?" Her shoulders stiffened. She didn't look back. "She won't understand," she said softly. "No," Tyrion whispered, "but she will stop you." That night, Arya struck again. 3 of Sansa's trusted guards were found hanging in the courtyard, throats slit, stark wolf pins shoved into their mouths. On the walls, written in blood, were 4 chilling words. "I haven't forgotten you." Panic spread through the keep. The inner circle met in the war room. Red priests, the dire night, northern bannermen sworn to Sansa's new regime. "She's inside the walls," one said. "She's hunting." The dire knight stood in silence, but his fists were clenched. Sansa was calm. "She's not here to kill me," she said. "She's here to change me. And when she fails, she'll become the very thing she fears." One of the priests spoke softly. "If you allow her to live, she'll split your forces. The people still see her as a Stark." "I know," Sansa said, and for the first time her voice trembled slightly. "She's still my sister." But even family couldn't stop what came next. In the dungeons beneath the old armory, Arya found something that made her blood freeze. Weapons, not steel's obsidian, crates of dragon glass, enough to arm 1,000 men, enough to kill dragons. And next to the crates, maps, plans, targets, Dragonstone, Volantis, Old Valyria. Sansa wasn't preparing for war. She was preparing for annihilation. Arya backed away slowly, heart pounding in her chest. Her fingers trembled near her blade. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure what to do, because Sansa wasn't just planning to defeat her enemies. She was planning to erase them from the world. The war hadn't started yet, but the walls of Winterfell were already shaking. Arya stood alone in the chamber beneath the old armory, surrounded by crates of dragon glass, maps scorched with names of cities that hadn't yet fallen, and war plans written in her sister's neat, icy hand. Her breath misted in the cold air as she stared at the page, marked with one name above all others. Demira Velaryon, eliminate immediately. Arya felt sick. She remembered the quiet girl who once sewed by the fire, dreaming of marrying princes. That girl was long dead, and in her place, someone Arya couldn't recognize anymore. Someone who had the power to destroy not just Westeros, but the fragile peace that had taken so many lives to build. She closed the map slowly, her hands trembling. For Arya Stark, killing was easy. But killing your own blood, that was something else entirely. Sansa stood atop the battlements as the storm rolled over the north. Her hair blew in the wind, cloak snapping behind her like a banner. She stared out into the white, her face unreadable. The dire knight stood beside her, silent, as always. "Do you trust her?" she asked, not looking at him. He didn't answer immediately, then quietly, "No." "Neither do I," Sansa murmured. "But it hurts more than I thought it would." He turned his head slightly. "You still see her as your sister?" "She is," Sansa whispered, "but she's not part of this world anymore. She left it. I stayed. You became its queen. No, she said bitterly. I became its consequence. She turned away from the snow. Prepare the ravens, send the order. We launch in 2 days. To Dragonstone, to the world. But Arya struck first. That night, beneath the cover of a storm, she entered the war tower. No alarms were triggered, no footsteps heard. She moved like mist, faster than the guards, swifter than the shadows. She didn't come to kill. She came to speak. She found Sansa alone, seated by the fire, reading a blood-stained ledger. You should have run when you had the chance, Sansa said without looking up. I did, Arya answered coldly. Now I'm back. Sansa set the book down gently. To stop me? Arya stepped forward, face unreadable. To understand. You won't, Sansa said. You see only blood and steel. I see the future. You see control, Arya snapped. Not peace. You're planning genocide. Sansa's eyes darkened. I'm planning survival. Survival of what? Your throne? Your rule? Arya's voice rose. You're no better than Cersei. That hit something deep. Sansa stood slowly, face pale but voice like ice. Don't ever compare me to her. Then prove you're not her, Arya said. Stop this madness, call off the invasion, destroy the dragonglass. Sansa stepped closer, eyes flickering. And let Demira build her new Targaryen empire? Let her bring dragons back over the sky? Arya held her ground. You're not protecting the North. You're trying to own the world. They stood inches apart now, 2 sisters born from the same blood, shaped by war and fire and betrayal. I loved you, Arya said quietly. I still do. I loved you too, Sansa replied. That's why I let you in. But if you raise a blade against me again, I won't need to, Arya said. She tossed something onto the table. Sansa looked down. It was the map, the one from the armory. Burned. Gone. I destroyed it, Arya whispered. You'll have to kill the world without your plans now. Sansa didn't move. Her breath came hard, slow. You realize what you've done? I saved you from yourself. But Sansa's face didn't show fury. It showed sorrow. You think that's going to stop me, she said. You think I didn't memorize every detail of that map, every name, every target? Arya's face fell. You've forgotten who I've become, Sansa whispered. I haven't, Arya said. That's the problem. Then she turned and vanished into the dark before the guards could respond. Sansa stared at the flames long after she left, then whispered to no one, It's time. At Dragonstone, war horns blew across the cliffs. Black sails had filled the sea. Demira Velaryon stood upon the ramparts, dragon-scale armor gleaming in the firelight. The wind whipped across her face as her beast circled overhead, screaming into the clouds. Her hand rested on the hilt of a Valyrian steel blade. A raven sat on her shoulder. The message it carried was clear. She's coming. And Demira only smiled. Let the North come, she said. Let the wolves drown in fire. Back in Winterfell, Tyrion listened from the crypts. Guards rushed past. Alarms sounded. The dire night issued orders. The war had begun, and as he stared up into the stone ceiling above him, he whispered with a crooked grin, And now the realm burns again, all thanks to another girl who wanted a better world. The wind over Dragonstone screamed like a dying god. Ships burned in the harbor, black sails sinking beneath churning waves as fire rained from the skies. Demira's dragon, a monstrous silver beast named Vakarian, dove through the storm. Clouds spewing molten death over the northern fleet. The sea boiled beneath its fury, but the north did not flinch. Winter had come to the sea. Sansa's ships, thick-ribbed, steel-plated, built not for elegance but survival, advanced through the fire, their sails soaked in brine to resist the heat. Flaming debris crashed around them, yet still they pushed forward. Atop the lead vessel stood Sansa Stark, armored in black and silver. Her face was hidden behind a dire-wolf-shaped helm, and her banner, a bleeding wolf over a field of ash, flapped violently behind her. She was no longer the Lady of Winterfell. She was the Iron Wolf, and she had come to take Dragonstone. On the cliffs above, Daemira Velaryon watched the carnage unfold. The light of burning ships reflected in her eyes, but she showed no fear. "They came faster than expected," her general muttered. "They came desperate," Daemira replied. She turned her eyes to the sky, where Vakarians circled like a phantom. "Let them land, let them taste the stone, then burn them inside it." Her voice was cold, regal, Targaryen. But inside Sansa's flagship, deep below deck, a different kind of weapon stirred, not dragonglass, not wildfire. It breathed, chained in iron, locked behind 6 steel gates, was a creature unlike anything Westeros had seen. It was not born. It had been made. From whispers in the dark, from secrets stolen in Old Town, from ancient blood mixed with shadow, the dire knight stood before it, armor gleaming red in the flickering torchlight. He reached into a pouch, pulling out a shard of glass carved with strange glyphs, then whispered, "You're needed now." The beast snarled, and behind it, the wall began to move. It wasn't one creature. It was 3. Meanwhile, Arya stood on the edge of a rocky hill overlooking Dragonstone's back cliffs. She had gotten there first. She always did. She watched the ships burning, the sky lit in shades of crimson and gold. She could already hear the screams, could already smell the ash. This wasn't a war anymore, it was a reckoning. And in her gut, she knew something else, something worse. Sansa didn't come to win, she came to erase. Arya turned toward a narrow stone pass. She moved quickly, blade in hand, heart cold. She had no army, no banner, but she had purpose. One final chance to stop her sister from becoming the very thing they once swore to destroy. The battle on the shore was carnage. Northmen stormed the beaches, clad in fur and steel, their war cries drowned by the roaring of Vakarian above. Archers fell by the dozens, their bodies crushed beneath crumbling towers. Fires raged through the lower battlements, but Sansa's secret weapon had landed. From the second ship, the dire night released the 3, and they tore through the defenders like whispers through wheat. They weren't quite wolves, not quite men, not quite anything that belonged in this world. They moved like shadows, howling. In 3 different pitches, their teeth blackened from the poisons fed to them since birth. A twisted fusion of direwolf, man, and magic. Daemira's soldiers broke ranks. Some fled, others begged for death. Even the dragon hesitated in the sky, and Sansa, walking among the fallen, watched it all unfold with chilling silence. She didn't give commands, she didn't gloat. She simply watched as Dragonstone began to fall. Arya reached the keep's highest tower just as the second gate fell. She passed corpses in northern armor, and some still breathing, whispering, her name like a prayer. "Help us! Please!" She didn't stop, because she knew where Sansa would be, and when she burst through the war room doors, blade drawn, heart pounding, Sansa was waiting, alone. The 2 sisters stared at each other across the stone floor, one cloaked in wolf-black armor, face half-shadowed, the other breathing hard, eyes wide with fury and disbelief. "You raised monsters," Arya hissed. "So did the realm," Sansa replied. "You came to kill them all." "I came to kill the game." Arya stepped forward. "By becoming the worst piece on the board?" Sansa looked at her, slowly removing her helm. Her red hair fell loose around her shoulders. Her face was older, colder, but not broken. "I became what I needed to," she said, "because no one else would." Arya's blade trembled. "Don't make me do this." Sansa's voice softened. "You came to kill me? I came to stop you. Then do it. Sansa stepped closer, chest exposed, heart unguarded. Arya's fingers clenched, her breath caught, her blade rose. Then the tower shook, hard, the dragon. A wall of flame erupted outside. Screams followed. The stones split beneath them. The end had begun. Arya turned to the window just for a second, and when she turned back, Sansa was gone. Outside, Demira took to the sky, her dragon's wings, blotting out the moon. She screamed one word over the battlefield, "Sansa!" And the final fight began. The sky over Dragonstone was torn in half, one side burning with dragonfire, the other split open by the howling of unnatural beasts. Vakarian, the great silver dragon, soared through the ash and smoke, his wings beating so hard they knocked soldiers off the cliffs. His flames licked across the courtyard, turning siege towers to molten ruin. And standing at the center of it all, unmoving, unfazed, was Sansa Stark. Her black armor was scorched, her hair tangled and wild. The dire knight stood at her side, his sword dragging behind him like a trail of death. Behind them, the three prowled, bloodied, panting, but alive. Demira circled above, her eyes locked on the woman who had dared to wage war on dragons. She didn't care about the North, or the old gods, or the politics of a broken realm. She came here for one reason, to kill the wolf who thought she could command fire. On the cliffs above, Arya watched the battlefield burn. Her breath came, fast. Her blade was wet with blood. Demira's men, Sansa's soldiers, maybe even some innocents. She didn't know anymore. What she knew was that everything had gone too far. The realm didn't need a queen anymore. It needed someone to stop them all. She descended toward the heart of the storm, eyes on her sister, heart split in two. Demira's voice shattered the sky. "Sansa Stark, you have no throne, no claim, no dragon. Come out and burn like the rest of your kind." Sansa stepped forward, the wind howling around her, her cape in tatters. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. She simply looked up at the creature in the sky and smiled. "I don't need a dragon," she said softly. "I made something worse." She raised her hand. The three roared in unison and launched upward, leaping stone to tower, wall to sky, not to fight Vakarian in the air, but to drag him down. The first one latched onto the dragon's wing, tearing through the flesh with claws like obsidian. The second slashed at his leg. The third, the smallest, the quietest, went for the eye. Vakarian shrieked, twisting, crashing toward the courtyard. Demira clung to his back, trying to steady him, but it was too late. The dragon fell, into the stone, through the walls, the tower collapsing around him in a cloud of fire and blood. And Sansa, standing below, didn't move. The dire knight stepped forward. "He's down." Sansa's voice was soft, certain. "Not enough." Demira pulled herself from the rubble, armor scorched, face burned down one side, but her fury intact. Her blade was drawn. Her steps were sure. She walked toward Sansa with the weight of fire in every step. "You came to kill dragons," she snarled, "but you forgot what dragons are made of." Sansa didn't draw her sword. She whispered, almost lovingly, "Fire and blood." Demira charged. Steel met steel. For the first time, Sansa fought. And for her life, not through armies, not through poison or politics, but blade to blade, fury to fury, and Demira was fast. But Sansa was colder. Every strike was precise, every step measured. She fought like someone who had died 1,000 times in silence and learned to rise without fanfare, but even queens bleed. Demira drove her sword deep into Sansa's side. The Iron Wolf staggered, blood blooming across her armor. Arya screamed, "From the cliffs, no!" But Sansa didn't fall. She caught Demira's wrist, yanked her forward, and plunged a dagger into her throat. It was the same dagger Bran had once been nearly killed with. The same that ended Littlefinger, Valyrian steel. Demira gasped. not in pain, but disbelief. You were never supposed to rule, Sansa whispered. Survive. Demira's knees buckled. Her sword fell. Her blood spilled across the broken stones of her house's legacy. And just like that, the last Targaryen was gone. Silence fell. The dire knight bowed his head. The three backed into the shadows, and Sansa, bleeding, still standing, looked up at the sky that had once burned her dreams away. Arya ran to her, catching her before she could fall. Sansa collapsed into her sister's arms, not like a ruler, not like a monster, just a girl, bleeding, broken, tired. "Why?" Arya whispered, her hands shaking. "Why did you do it?" Sansa's voice was weak. "Because no one else ever would. You became the very thing we fought to stop. I became what was necessary." Arya's tears hit her armor. "You killed too many. I saved more. You're hated. I can live with that." Arya shook her head. "No, you can't." There was silence between them. Then slowly Arya drew her blade, and Sansa smiled. "Make it quick." Arya hesitated. Her hand trembled, but in the end she dropped the blade. "You'll die soon enough." Sansa coughed, blood on her lips. "I know.